I didn't grow up in a home with guns, though I did have an uncle who I think suspected that my brothers and I were not sufficiently masculine, and so he took us out to get our hunting licenses and forced us through a sort of 2-day gun course, and we went shooting. And I actually had a lot of fun shooting, I have to say. Though I couldn't bring myself to actually shoot an animal, but at the skeet shooting was fun. But then for me, my concern with guns probably began when, or at least it took a big upsurge when, not probably less than a quarter mile from my house in Visalia, California, which is where I grew up, my cousin and her husband were sitting at a Carl's Jr. with their 3-year-old daughter, and they were in a sort of strip mall, and across the way, someone had tried to rob a clothing store, and the police showed up, and a shootout ensued, and a stray bullet went through her husband Jeff's head. And he died right in front of his 3-year-old daughter. And his daughter thought for the longest time that her mother had killed her father because of this. And then her mother subsequently went on to, she to this day has ongoing drug problems that are, in some sense, directly related to that point in her life when things went south. Much later, fast forward, went to the UK for doctoral work, so lived in Scotland and England and Germany for 9 years. And that was a time when I could sort of step outside the US and look at the US in some ways from the eyes of other countries. And my colleagues would just wonder every time a mass shooting happened, which was, of course, often enough that it came up regularly, what is it about the US that can't let go of its guns? We've all managed to put this behind us, largely, at least the kind of free access that the US has, the proliferation. Why can't the US do something about this? Why the gridlock? We moved back to the US now just about 4 years ago, and I then started to see the US as a strangely dangerous place for our now 4 kids as they've gone to school. They have regular school lockdowns. Sometimes there are actual threats, sometimes it's just practice. But my children are now growing up in this, to call it militarized would be a kind of euphemism in some sense. At least military might assume some kind of regiment or order to how things are. It's a kind of, it feels like an unpredictable, chaotic gunscape. I feel a bit like the protester at the rally who's holding up the sign that says, it's bad when even the introverts are out. And that I just feel like the kind of rage and powerlessness that's been boiling up for years, I feel like I have to say something about this issue. And if the New Testament can't speak to the issue of gun violence, then I don't know what can. I'm going to ask a question that I hope is provocative. That's, can a Christian own a gun? Obviously, there are tens of millions of Christians who do own guns. I know several myself. I'm sure each of us in this room knows Christians who own guns. But I'm going to argue that the gun offers the wielder a temptation to achieve the ability to cause instantaneous death that is utterly foreign to the way the New Testament envisaged personhood in this world. So in fact, the New Testament, if we think guns and read the New Testament, we're going to come up against problems that I think it's incommensurable to have at least as a means of self-defense or defense of others, a weapon of the sort that a gun is. That's the case that I'll try to make tomorrow in dialogue with some New Testament texts. I expect there will be pushback or discussion. Of course, I welcome that. But this at least is the first fruits of my rage.